Well, we're going to start with spot Bitcoin, right? I mean, I feel like we should address the macro environment.
I mean, spot where we're at so we're recording this on Monday, May 20th. And while today Bitcoin surged from 66,000 to just below 70, so we're at 69,700 right now. Um,
Does
and looking at this chart, I honestly still don't think we're out of the woods. I hate to say it. I wish I did, but we're not. Um, and I don't think it's really about um, like anything except going back and revisiting some of these local highs and breaking them. And furthermore, this move, I think what partially what concerns me about this move is this huge dip on May 20th still looks like a lower low. Um, and we really, I mean, it doesn't look like we're putting in a whole lot of great groundwork to try to reverse that yet. So I guess I'm still a little bit skeptical. I think it looks like lower lows forming and lower highs. It still looks like that.
okay. All right. So this could be a fake out, basically. We're conscious of the fact that this could be a fake out.
It could be a fake out, and I mean, I think it was pretty, from my perspective, it was pretty clear that the node monks move um like when it broke down below uh 0.3 to 0.275 and then it ripped all the way up to 0.31, that was a fake out too.
Yeah, well, so and then my next question was going to be, so if this is potentially a fake out with Bitcoin, what are the implications for that for ordinals? Because ordinals are kind of at, I mean, they've sort of been in like a major low spot the past week and a half. Like, since, they dipped further, I think, since we last spoke, generally speaking. Um, what are your thoughts about sort of what happens to the broader ordinals market if spot does deepen further down?
I mean, looking at these charts, like, I mean, node monks is the one that I've been spending the most time on um day to day because there's a lot of volume there and it's been pretty interesting price action, and it could potentially be considered a bit of a proxy for the rest of the ordinals ecosystem. And quite honestly, like, I'm prepared for another leg down right now, is my view. I mean, it's like, if you look at the Bitcoin chart, it's pretty rough and it's not super clear. And we're prepared for the possibility of another leg down. And I don't think our view is that we're not out of the woods. Um, but
Mo
it's not a terrible chart. I'm sorry, just let me finish. It's not a terrible chart. The Node Monks chart, it to me, it's like a bad chart.
it's a bad. Oh
Yeah,
no.
it's a bad chart. It looks bad. It looks like it's about to potentially really break down. There's this, 0.27 level that we're testing now for the third time. We're at it right now. Like we've talked about on previous podcasts before, the more times that you test a critical level, either way, whether you're going down or up, the more likely that critical level is either to break down or up. So now we're basically sucking liquidity. People are selling, trying to suck liquidity out of the node monks market again at 0.27. How many times can that happen, and how many people can try to do that before other sellers try to undercut them and take it lower? I mean, that's the question, right?
So, okay. So then the question is, what would need to happen in order for you to feel more confident about a reversal? Is it just a matter of Bitcoin holding above 70K? Are there other factors? Is there a universe where Bitcoin, holds above 70K or reverses and ordinal stay down? Like,
Yeah, that is a possibility. I don't think that that's um, the base scenario for me. I think that I think that there's basically there's two considerations about this, and this is what I talk about with our LPs too a lot, is I do think you need to be cognizant and aware of the overall Bitcoin moves because they obviously impact Ordinals pricing, Ordinals trades in Bitcoin. And Ordinals price action is also heavily impacted by Bitcoin. So I think that's like an important thing for timing a particular trade. But I think you actually also have to, and this is what like we talk about when we discuss like getting to know a particular asset and becoming an expert in like the rhythm of that particular asset. I think that you still have to do that for whatever you're buying. So like I would be looking, so basically what I would be looking for is I would be looking for a Bitcoin reversal on the charts and a node bunks reversal on the charts.
Right. And they could have potentially, excuse me, they could potentially have like, there could be like an expansive time spread between those two events.
Totally. And the way I would view a major Bitcoin move, if we break, back above all-time highs and ordinals are sort of trading sideways at their current prices, I would view that as an opportunity to cycle Bitcoin into ordinals before the people that made all that money on that Bitcoin move cycled their liquidity into ordinals.
Wait, say that again. Because in my mind, I'm like, well, if Bitcoin goes up, historically, what we've seen is ordinals for some period of time chop sideways because people are taking their profits in dollars. Do you foresee something like that happening again?
So
Time
I think
period?
so I think the way that it would go is it would go like that in the immediate term. It would probably go the way that it's already traded, in that you'd have USD price remain constant and Bitcoin price action potentially going down a little bit in the short term.
Okay.
Um, but I think what then would happen is people that then make money on Bitcoin over time, they cycle those profits into other assets. And I think they'll cycle those profits into other assets on the native
Okay.
chain.
Right, these people who are selling out of ordinals, the majority of them are not like getting out for good. The majority of them are like regular ordinals buyers who will probably cycle back into the market at some point.
So yes, but another bearish consideration from my perspective is like I think that the fungible token trading, particularly BRC20 profitability excuse me, has had a major impact on Ordinal's liquidity over time. And I think one of the things we saw early on is people that made a lot of money with BRC20 cycled that money into Ordinals. And I think it's a little bearish that there's really not any great fungible token trades right now on Bitcoin that people are in a reasonable medium or short-term time range where they've made a ton of money that they would be potentially cycling that into ordinals.
Like recently, there hasn't been an obvious winner. Would we
Right.
consider dog potential? I mean, dog would be like the best case scenario. And I agree with you. That's not like the most bullish thing I've ever heard for runes, that dog is the winner.
I mean, yeah, I'm
Um,
looking at the price action on that right now. I mean, I think it's a little early to know who or what will be the winner. Um, I think it would be hard to argue, frankly, that any of these have been real winners. I mean, from the time
right.
that like we converted to runes, now obviously we weren't buying at these prices, but there were a lot of people that did. All this stuff looks pretty bad.
So, okay. So, but basically, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was in a coffee shop and like, I ran into a venture capital investor who had, put a bunch of money into a runes play of some kind. I won't get more specific than that. And he was like, yeah, that investment didn't work out the way that we thought. Like this was an infra play. He's like, yeah, that investment didn't work out the way that we thought. Like as if like it's just over now. Like runes are dead.
Right.
Which is like interesting. I mean, it's been what it's literally been. I mean, today's May 20th. It's like literally been a month. I mean,
Yeah.
do you think we're in like runes are dead territory right now? Like, do you think that like,
I mean, the quicker people declare runes dead, the quicker they can come back, I think. But I also, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't see a whole lot of catalysts for it to turn around in the immediate term.
okay, BRC 20, I haven't even looked at in God knows how long. Has there been anything interesting happening there or not really?
Not really. I want to make sure that nothing happened since I last looked at it like 2 hours ago. Yeah, I mean it's chopping around the mid to low 40s. It's not much has
40,
happened there.
40 specifically.
40, yeah, that's
And
what Rose.
all the other BRC 20 kind of meme coins that were pumping, whatever it was, like 6 weeks ago, or like, leading up to the happening, those have all since dumped. Like
Um,
corn and
yes, everything,
pretty
everything. I mean, the halving turned out to be a bit of a local top for meme coins on Bitcoin
for
overall,
everything,
not even just the runes coins, but all the meme coins.
for everything.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so runes and BRC 20 in a coma.
In a coma, yeah. It's and my view is the way these things generally turn around, the catalyst is price action. So it has to grind around until somebody or some bodies decides that it's cheap enough that they're going to pull the trigger on a large amount of it, which could then catalyze a move up. Um, and I just don't think we've seen that yet.
Do you think runes slash BRC, do you think tokens will potentially reverse before inscriptions, or do you think inscriptions, whenever these reversals happen, will lead the way?
So that's the big question, and I don't know the answer to that. It's been in the past. That's what I was trying to say before. Is in the past, it's been the fungible tokens that have sort of led the way. This time, I'm not sure. I think we'll be watching to see if the fungible tokens can lead the way. But I think what I was trying to say is that I'm pretty concerned that there's not a great catalyst for them to. I actually think right now, and I don't have like a whole lot of data to back this up, but my instinct is that it's going to be inscriptions.
My instinct is it's going to be inscriptions too, and my instinct is that it will be a response in one way or another, whether there's a lag or not. There's going to be some movement once Bitcoin is like breaking all-time highs in like a serious way again.
Right. I think
Um,
that's probably correct.
which we're not that far away from.
No,
I
we're
mean, that
not.
is a situation that could, I mean, again, it's sort of like we don't really know how long this could last, and ordinals could lag, Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin doesn't have another leg down, if it does just break through 70 and we're breaking all-time highs, we could also turn around way quicker than people thought. I mean, it could kind of go either way.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that looking at the chart right now, we're at like a pretty critical moment where um it's trying to like make a new high, a new local and all-time high. And if it does, it's extremely bullish. And if it doesn't, I mean, quite honestly, I could see the market getting a little bit
Nervous.
worried. Yeah, it's the type. So it's the type of thing where these moves, especially if we spend any time above 70, it's like the market could potentially get complacent and bullish, and overextended, and if that's the case, that's not the fuel that we need to take a real big leg up. But the fuel that we need is for people to just go short.
How common are like triple tops? Like, is there a universe where we just like completely break down from 70?
Um,
Like, is
I
30
so
to
I
40 in
think
the
we're in
cards?
a long. I think we're in a pretty strong uptrend. Let me take a look at what I think that would have to look like for it to be like really bad. So I think for this to be, and we had talked about like worst case scenario and what I think that would be, and like the trend line that we were talking about that would be at like 52,000. Um I think that would be like pretty much the worst case scenario. I think if you break, if you crash below 52,000, if we're in the 40,000s, it's not like it's over or anything like that. But I think at that point you need to start asking if the trend has reversed.
Oof. Okay. But as long as I mean, theoretically though, like as long as we're staying above this 52,000 line, that's still uptrend territory. And actually potentially it might even be not appropriate, but kind of consistent with like the greater, pattern of corrections that we've seen in the past.
Totally. And I just want to be very clear, like we're prepared for this to not be over. I think it likely is. And I also think that this market still looks like this market and this cycle looks just incredibly bullish to me. So nothing's really changed on that front. It's just it's there are these moments that are, that are just difficult and they're meant to be to shake people out.
Yeah, yeah, they're right. Um, Interesting. Okay. It's funny because this same investor who was like, oh, runes are dead, blah, blah, blah. Also, I mean, I've been hearing a lot of the market's turning around. Everyone's really positive. Everyone feels really convinced that the market's turning around. You think that that is a little bit just premature, is sort of
Yes.
vibe, right? Maybe not wrong, but a premature call.
100%.
Okay.
100%. And I think that what you and I talk about a lot internally when we're talking about like trading strategy is markets in general, and this market in particular has a tendency to swing aggressively between extreme pessimism and extreme optimism. And that creates an opportunity for um, people to be wrong and get liquidated.
Right. Um, should we get into some of the more specific inscription assets and what's happening kind of at the micro level with some of the bigger collections that we follow closely?
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we, I mean, maybe we should, I mean, so Node Monks is not at like all-time lows right now. They're down, but they went down to like the low 0.2s at some point, I believe.
Let's take a look. I think the lowest node monks was 0.269.
Oh,
And
okay.
I
So
think
they're
that
up.
that was,
I thought that they went to like 0.24 or something, but I could be wrong about that.
I don't see it on this chart. That it might have been the case. I don't
Okay.
see it.
So they're pretty close to all-time lows.
Oh, actually, no, I do. I see a 0.25. Yeah. There's some lows here.
Yeah.
Sorry. They're on the price list and not the chart. Weird. Um, but yeah, no, it's brutal. I mean, it's just brutal. I think
Profits is taking a beating.
I think Puppets is doing the worst, is what I can see. And we had talked about how it sort of had its own chart pattern. And I think that maybe that worked against it in some way because that pattern then broke down, whereas the other charts were sort of hiding within the larger trends that then gave them, I guess, a bit of a floor. But when this pattern broke, I mean, man, it broke and it's ugly. And I think it's what we had talked about before. It's like this is the type of collection where it's super hot, but it can evaporate pretty quickly. And I'm curious what do you think about it right now?
I mean, I feel like this is kind of consistent with what we've sort of said about puppets for a long time, like high risk, high reward. The reason I don't think puppets are dead, and I do think that on the upside, they could also have explosive moves whenever this trend globally does reverse, is that they still are kind of killing on volume. I mean, node monks and puppets are still like they're just being aggressively traded, So I
True.
see puppets as kind of just like a more volatile asset than node monks, but that doesn't necessarily mean lower reward in the end. I mean, it's very possible that puppets are just a screaming buy right now.
Yeah. No, it is. It totally is.
So yeah, I mean, that's sort of my point of view about puppets is just more volatility relative to node monks. Node monks are seen as more blue chippy, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
agree. I think that it's the same thing we've talked about. It's like lower like
lower
lower
upside,
upside
high.
with no monks, but lower risk. And like with the puppets, it's like this is exactly what we thought could happen with them. And um
Yeah,
yeah, no, I mean I think it's and I still think it does have the opportunity to outperform on the upside, especially from these prices.
exactly. Exactly.
It's
So
interesting. And OMB, I mean, going through the list, it's been fascinating to watch these projects. OMB
OMB
has
was crushed this weekend
it's been
after
so
holding for a
resilient.
while, right? I mean, OMB was doing, OMB's whole thing is they have a community of like cultish followers, ZK Jargo's community of cultish followers who don't sell, who are like
Right.
basically like aggressively, the whole like vibe ZK actively encourages and super disincentivizes selling, right? It's like he captivates this group into not selling. It's part of the like OMB cult. It was interesting. I mean, they have been holding so well, and then this weekend it just broke the fuck down.
Yeah.
Um,
It was so resilient.
yeah. But I mean, I also there's a little part of me that's like, maybe we are getting to the bottom because it's like everything is just like cracking. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we're starting to get to like a super depressing point where
Yeah.
everything's just like really like everything that we thought had the strength to hold on is just losing it.
Yeah.
Quantum Cats also dipped substantially, not as much, but dipped.
Quantum Cats dipped. Yeah. And they were doing very well too.
Yeah. They actually had a little pump at one point during this whole depressing
Yes.
cycle. But they lost that edge. Yeah.
The quantum cats were doing pretty well. And then the another really interesting one to me has been the Bitcoin frogs. Have you been looking at that at all?
Yes. And wait, so where are they now? The last time I checked, they were at 0.05.
So they're at point oh five nine. They're up a little bit. They basically point they put in like a higher low at point oh five. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, interesting.
So like that chart, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, of course, but like just looking at the chart, it looks better than node monks.
Well, and the thing that's interesting about frogs, right, is like who the hell talks about frogs? Like you would really think like this is the type of thing to kill a collection like that, yet it remains in the top 10 for volume. It's been consistently still in the people are buying these things still.
You're right. You're right. It's
So
an interesting collection, and they're pretty cheap. Um, I think at this price, I think the frogs are a pretty interesting trade, especially because of all the dynamics that we talked about, and then the fact that the frog chart is demonstrating a higher low. You know
mhm,
what I mean? It's like that's pretty, it's an interesting trade. I'm not
mhm.
like recommending it for our viewers. I just want to be clear, but like um it's a trade we might potentially take.
There might be like a collective consciousness about the frogs. I mean, and frogs had this, I mean, frogs did, to be fair, have this around the 0.1 mark, where like around 0.1, it was a little bit difficult to break down below 0.1. It like took a little energy to crack it below 0.1 because I think there were certain buyers who were like, holy shit, frogs below 0.1, right? Just the way I think people felt that about node monks below 0.3 for a while, right? Like there was like there were some moments where you had like 40 node monks like below 0.3 and like no one was selling below 0.3. And when, it would go below 0.3, people would snatch it up. And then eventually that broke down. I imagine there might be a little bit of that vibe happening with frogs at 0.05. Like
Totally.
people are just like, that's so cheap. I can't believe it. I gotta buy a frog that's below 0.05, right?
yeah. And what you're describing, it's like a great trading dynamic that people should like try their best to, if they haven't already. I think most people that are watching this might have, but try to wrap your head around this dynamic. So you've got like, just think about it in the sense that you've got a chunk of people that want to sell, but they want to sell for as high as they can and they don't want to dump the price. So they're trying to trickle these things into the market, and they're it's the buyers that then decide how high of a price they're willing to pay for that. So they're going to keep trickling these in until the buyers buy. And that's how it works. And the problem is when you hit the same level multiple times in a row, eventually the buyers at that particular price dry up.
Well, and they start to expect a price, right? Like there starts to be like an unwillingness to go up. Why would you pay more, basically?
Right.
That becomes the new fair price, essentially, in the buyer's minds.
Totally. And yeah, so those are basically all of them. And then Shrooms is also interesting to me because Shrooms is doing a lot of what we described. There just aren't a ton of buyers rushing in. So it's just the people that thought they were going to flip these things for quick profit are just slowly but surely just undercutting each other. And now you have the Chaumian Mint Shroom, which is Shroom 164 on the floor for 0.177. It's pretty interesting. It's not a bad Shroom in my opinion.
0.1, what is it? 0.1.
77.
Okay. I am also, let me take a look at the blob chart. I am also feeling very bullish about the blobs.
Yeah, I would love to get a breakdown from you on that.
This is a project that I'm actually excited about in the bear market, or in the correction market, if you will. Because I think the upside on this is potentially really big. So this is what I learned. I spoke to Neuro, who is one of the co-founders. It is a way more extensive project than I even realized. So basically Blob, so Neuro and ELOC, who, have done a bunch of stuff in the space, they've contributed to Ordinal Core, as I, mentioned last week. I'll just really quickly describe the art. So first off, the art is sort of an evolution of a concept that Neuro was working on for like a year prior, which was he was trying to take brainwave imaging scans and create generative art with them, basically. He is a psychologist, I believe, by trade, in addition to being an artist. And this was like a project that he was working on for years. I remember we had a conversation privately. He was like, oh, I'm going to scan your brain. We're going to like make, inscription images of brain scans. And he had been working on that for a long time. And one of the kind of parts of the story here was sort of like an homage, like a mental health awareness kind of thing. His brother died by suicide, and he talks about this really, kind of publicly in a way that I think the community has sort of responded to in an advocacy kind of way. Anyway, long story short, he kind of by hand sort of drew this kind of blob picture that sort of represented this, brain blob, this like brain blob, consciousness blob. And he sort of did it off the cuff. And he posted it on Twitter, and he said something to the effect of, let there be an army of blobs. That's what he said. And for whatever reason, that word blob just was like the mimetic switch. It was like people, I think, went from thinking that this was like an academic project. This is my interpretation. I think people went from being like, oh, Neuro's doing this like, kind of strange academic, like psychology thing. And he kind of gave it a mimetic twist, right? Like he turned it into these, like he turned this art thing into this, into something that, was had a mimetic quality to it. Blob, the blob army, the blob, revenge of the blobs, and so then he created a PFP that, post just went viral. He decided to completely shift gears, went full blob, created like a series of inscriptions, a 10K collection, I believe. And also another thing that he did, they're generative, they're all generative art pieces. So they're like physicals that he drew, and then they are run through code, basically. They are each pieces of generative art, so that's got that angle. And they also kind of have this PFP vibe. So they're kind of straddling the line between generative art and PFP, because they have all of the pieces kind of have those glasses to them, like the eyes on them. So it's like generative art, it kind of like is sort of this intersection between generative art and PFP, which I think is smart. But for whatever reason, just the concept of blob resonated with the community. Okay, so that's what the concept is. The other thing that he did that I think is actually the thing that makes me really bullish, I mean, it's like, you know, good concept, but lots of projects have good concepts. The thing that I think really shifted for him is that he's just incredibly well connected, and he, you know, distributed this collection to over 100 different and like communities, both in the ordinal space and also in the Ethereum and Solana spaces. So just really, really, really broad ranging distribution amongst a bunch of different alpha groups throughout Ethereum and Ordinals worlds, broad range distribution. At some point, Jing Li, who was the former community manager from Ordinals core, right, from like the Ordinals Discord, the official Ordinals Discord, got involved and was like, hey, we want to distribute blobs to the Chinese node monks community, which I thought was super interesting. There's like a special Chinese node monk server, which actually I should have known, because I knew that Jing Li was like working with the node monks team in some capacity, but that's what he was doing. He's like managing node monks China. And he just became more and more and more involved. And Jing Li is obviously one of the probably the best connected ordinals influencers in China, especially on the inscription side. And Jing Li just kind of blew up blobs in China. And a ton of which tracks with what we know about blobs. We heard about blob from a big Chinese investor. Jing Li actually had the idea to buy the EPIC and create a rune, an EPIC rune, and distribute it to blob holders and other collectors. But Jing Li didn't have, you know, he needed an investor. He needed like a major investor to get it done. And so Neuro, you know, supported that, as did a bunch of other very influential collectors, project founders in this space. So here are the people who are involved with EPIC. Inscribed Pepes, Ordinal MaxiBiz, Nullish. These are all people who are like financially invested, to my understanding. They are all like, you know, major investors in this collection. Basically, they have like just a huge number of all of these big project founders who are behind EPIC. So it's like Blob, Nullish, Jing Li is like, you know, got the like China vote on lock, Ordinal MaxiBiz, Inscribed Pepes, and then like a bunch of other really influential Chinese investors who I'm not allowed to name. So that's what's up with Blob and EPIC. EPIC is going to be distributed to a bunch of different collections, not just Blob. There's no single collection, according to Neuro, that is going to unilaterally dominate the distribution. The idea is to diversify distribution amongst all of these collections and more, have as wide distribution as possible. They're going to have an allocation for letters they offered me. I mean, like, they just want this to get into the hands of everyone who loves ordinals and everyone who could love ordinals, is sort of the vibe that I get. But yeah, I would say hearing that ZK Shark and Inscribed Pepes are both, that you know, effectively Owl and ZK Shark are both involved in this, is just extremely bullish. And all of the like China investors, I mean, that's like a pretty solid triumvirate.
So if any, what's the plan for the rune? Do you know?
They're going to distribute it to, they're going to airdrop it to people based on the inscriptions they hold. So all these inscription collection, all these project founders of all these inscription collections are going to get airdrops of the EPIC. Triple EPIC. It's such a tongue twister.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm a lot more bullish on the pieces themselves, the blob pieces, so far than I am on the rune. I mean, like,
Well, the rune hasn't been distributed yet. I mean, there's no like price action really to speak of. I mean, there might be, but it's like 5% of the collection. Who cares?
I just mean like conceptually. I think like all the elements that were pulled into this blob project sound super interesting. Like, you know, generative is obviously sort of like a nut that everybody's trying to crack on ordinals and figure out what are going to be the big generative projects, something we're very interested in. And then combining that with a PFP, I think is a cool concept.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing that makes me epic about the rune is that it's going to get heavily pushed by really influential people, and not just influential people in ordinals, but people who have heavy influence in other ecosystems.
Yeah.
I mean, like Owl and ZK together behind anything is, for me, feels like a obvious thing I want to have exposure to.
Do you think they're both going to promote it?
They already are. They've both been promoting it, and they're both going to
Oh, I didn't
continue.
know ZK was promoting it.
Yes.
I did know Owl was.
ZK is in on this epic, epic, epic.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens then. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. We will see. And this is apparently going to happen imminently. The other thing is, I believe they are trying to get listed on a major centralized exchange that will not be named pretty soon, like in the next couple weeks.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, something's going to happen soon.
Do
It
you
would
know who
behoove
holds the
them.
epic in that crew?
I actually didn't ask, but I would venture to guess that it's probably either Jing Li, or is it XBTC is his kind of partner in China who's like also helping them.
Not sure.
Yeah, I just learned this name today talking to Neuro. But so Jing Li has been on the China side of this, has been working with a guy named XBT. And my guess is that it's either, I mean, it's the Blob core team that holds it. So apparently the Blob core team is Jing Li, great score for the Blob core team in general. I mean, like the fact that they have Jing Li on their core team is like already massively bullish for Blob, in my opinion. Jing Li, XBT, ELOC, and Neuro. So it's the Blob treasury almost certainly holds this epic. I mean, that might be like the update. I'm not totally sure. Is there anything else that we want to chat about today?
No, I think that was really good.
I will say the only just one thing I want to say about Blob, just on the like, do we want blobs or do we want epics? The reason, I mean, I agree. I think they're both interesting. And I don't necessarily think that one is a proxy for the others for the other, because epics are not going to be like more heavily distributed to blobs necessarily. Like I feel like Neuro was like pretty clear with me that like, yes, obviously, of course, blobs are going to get epics, but it's not going to be like some outrageously disproportionate allocation relative to like Ordinal MaxiBiz or Inscribe Pepe or any of these other projects that they distribute to. Like the goal is to have broad ranging distribution. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like, obviously, I do think that it's likely that if Epic, crushes, that will look good for the Blob team, and it'll be like bullish for the Blob team, but it's not necessarily like a super direct correlation in terms of like how these projects, financially interact with each other.
I totally agree. And I also think that we can probably get a decent amount of our exposure just from holding projects that we already hold that aren't even blob based on who is involved in this thing. We're probably going to get a pretty decent allocation to epic, no matter what.
Which would also, right, exactly, because we have
Because we hold OMB, we hold Inscribe Pepe, we hold everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, which is the other thing I was just going to say, I was like, in my mind, there's one last thing that I just think is worth noting because it's interesting. I don't necessarily know if this will be us. Maybe, who knows in the future how things will change for us. But they're also doing like, there's like a special VIP thing for like blob holders who hold 88 or more blobs. So like blob whales. Apparently there's like quite a few blob whales in China. We probably know a couple of them if we put our heads together. And the secret number for to become a blob whale is to have 88 blobs, which is like a special number in Chinese, as you know.
Right. That's a
And
big amount too.
it's about 4 and change Bitcoin worth blobs at today's prices. So those, yeah, anyone who has 88 blobs gets like special invitations to special like VIP events. They're hosting these events all over the world. They have like 8 events planned right now globally. They're going to be at consensus. I mean, they're throwing parties. They have like a big event space in San Francisco where like the core team like regularly goes and hangs out. I mean, that's something else to just throw into the mix there, is that I think that they're doing a good job at like throwing in some like perks. And yeah, they're definitely trying to make the 88 blob whale a thing.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's smart.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, but anyway, that's pretty much all I got for this week. We will see what happens in a couple weeks. I feel like 2 weeks from now, it'll either be like super boring and everything will still be dead, or we'll be just having a completely different conversation.
Yeah, no, me too. It'll be really interesting to watch this develop in the next 2 weeks. I have a feeling we'll be having a completely different conversation, but we'll see.
Yeah. We'll see. All right, cool. Okay, talk to you later. Ciao.